Hello, and welcome to this episode of Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Welcome to episode 4 of our newly launched podcast presented by the Downtown Seattle Association. I'm just having a ton of fun with this. And in episode 4, I have the great opportunity to sit down with Ethan Stowell, of course, the founder and head of Ethan Stowell Restaurants, now an 18-restaurant enterprise. And Ethan is just a fascinating individual, has had a huge impact, certainly on the food scene in the city of Seattle. Born in Germany, which I didn't know until we sat down, but raised on Capitol Hill in Seattle. He was a self-trained chef, didn't have any formal training, began cooking in his family friend's catering company and spent some time in Atlanta before making his way back to Seattle. And the enterprise that Ethan has built first started in downtown, and of course, with his first restaurant in 2003, Union, over on First and Union in downtown. It closed during the Great Recession in 2010. And at the time, he said he'd never open another restaurant in downtown Seattle. And we talk about that because he has since, and there's a few more coming. I think we've all had great sympathy for anybody with any affiliation with the restaurant industry over these last 2 years or so, and the impact the pandemic has had on their operations and workers and all the pivoting and adjusting they've had to do, from being shut down to opening with limited capacity to now facing labor shortages and supply chain impacts. And we talk about those issues and many others, including some tips and tricks if you're a cooker of salmon at home or if you're a fan of ragu. You'll walk away with some new techniques on that front to perfect your ragu and your salmon cooking. So we cover a lot of ground. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Ethan Stowell. Thanks, Ethan, for joining me for episode 4 of Seattle City Makers from Tavalot on 2nd Avenue.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Nice to see you too.
Good to see you. I want to talk about a number of things, but maybe we start at just a snapshot of what's opened, what you've reopened, what's new. There's a lot there, so I need to go down the full list. But I've been struck by all that you had before, certainly the pandemic, and how strong your portfolio and operation is today. I mean, most folks are just trying to reopen what they had. You've done that, plus you've got some new things going on.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely went into this wanting to be aggressive. I mean, we already had a plan in place for a 2-year growth program, so we didn't really deviate from it. We definitely have all the restaurants and neighborhoods open. We added on a Tavalata on Stoneway. We added on to Victor Tavern at Via 6.
Love Victor.
Yeah, Victor's great. I mean, I have a fun time with that. We were just talking about it before I got here. And we added 2 restaurants out in Spokane. We have a food hall called the Wonder Market and the Tavalata in Spokane as well. And we've got a few more things in the works. We're going to open up a restaurant in Woodinville. We're going to open a restaurant in Redmond. So we got some stuff happening. And we're excited about it.
My own personal plug for Victor. Downtown was in desperate need of a great place with great food where you could watch sports with your kids in a cool space. I think you nailed it with that. In the old, now I'm blanking on the
Tanaka-san.
Tanaka-san, the old Tom Douglas space there at Via 6. But what was the decision to go there? I mean, you're across the street from Amazon and a bunch of big employers, but they're not all back yet. And you said, let's open this spot.
Well, I mean, to be fully transparent, we had signed the lease before.
You had planned. You had that in the works. Yeah.
Before COVID hit. But we would have still gone forward with it. I mean, and it's actually been crazy busy. I mean, it's partly because it's just really approachable for everybody, but it's probably also that there's not that many places open down there. So we kind of have, kind of captured the audience a little bit. But, I mean, we always wanted to do something that had a sports bar theme to it. We didn't want it to be a traditional sports bar. We wanted to be someplace where you could feel comfortable bringing your kids, where you could feel comfortable, I'm 40, mid-40s, we'll say. Something where me and my friends could go. Yeah. Where it's not, shots of Jaegers and Jaeger cooling machines and, Bud Light everywhere. We want to go someplace you get a good cocktail, get a nice meal, get a get a burger, get a nice healthy salad.
Yeah, no sticky tables or sticky floors and great food. I've been there with my kids, my mom, and friends
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I've loved it, and thank you.
Thanks.
As a neighborhood resident for what you're doing there. As you mentioned, you had growth plans and have been growing pre-pandemic, and then as we try to emerge from this pandemic, I've always been impressed with just the consistency of quality across all that you do, both certainly the food, the experience, the service, and I'm intrigued by kind of how you've achieved that. Everybody can do, a lot of people can do one or two things well once. Scaling is often difficult. How have you scaled so well in what you're doing?
Well, I mean, I think obviously the restaurant industry is everybody knows it's a tough business, right? I think the number one thing that kind of has given our company good success is that we actually really enjoy having employees. I mean, at its heart, restaurant business is a people-based business, and you have a lot of employees. And I will tell you, they're the most rewarding and toughest part of the job. And we genuinely like, making customers happy. We genuinely like having good, fun employees to work with. And I also have a good team. This is our 15th year now of being open. And, we have a couple employees that have been with us for 15 of the 15 years. So I think we have the best leadership team in the business in Seattle, for sure, and probably the Northwest. But we've just been good about getting talent, retaining talent, giving people opportunities, putting people in the right spots where they can, really blossom and succeed. And so there's not like some recipe to it. There's constant, consistent coaching, and trying to be as clear on vision as you possibly can, and letting people that are good do good work for the company. It's not a. I'm just there to try to not screw it up. So
the food's important, but the people are critical, right?
Sure, food's important, but people are critical. It's the people that make the restaurants, and it's not me. It's the staff. It's the teams, and I just have to do what I can to give them the best support and make sure everything kind of rolls on time and everything kind of functions the best it can. But my job is to support them more than anything else.
So you mentioned leadership, and I've been asking our guests on our podcast here of just how they've had to show up differently through the pandemic. Is there a leadership quality or trait that you either had to lean into a little harder or develop to, help your team get through this massive period of disruption? Certainly, the restaurant industry bore the brunt of that along with arts and culture. But is there a trait that you had to kind of lean into? Well,
I mean, obviously, this has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through in this business. And I'll say currently right now is the hardest period of the pandemic. It's actually the hardest part is having Omicron spreading everywhere is making it hard. But no, I think the main thing is being a consistent leader, showing up in the way that people want to show up, clear messaging, and staying positive. I mean, we definitely, there was so many, I'm so over the words, pivot, and pandemic. I mean, there's the words that I just don't like. I'm over them. But we've had to change our business so many times throughout the pandemic. We switched to all online, then we switched to a combination of online and outdoor, and then we are allowed to open indoor, and then you're kind of pulling it all together and trying to figure out these systems. I'm not usually the leader that just tells people how it is. I like input, I like voices, but at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know how things were going to go, right? So I wanted any responsibilities to kind of be on me. So basically, if we failed, it'd be my fault, right? So I went in and just told, the first pivot was me saying, this is what we're doing. I'm sorry, we're just not having a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And then just being supportive of people about the direction we went. And then obviously, after that first initial decision, we went back to normal management styles. But I think of just getting people focused. And like I said, I'm not a hard leader, but it was very much like, hey, this is what we're doing. And
did you approach it that way because of just the urgency and how fast things were moving and uncertainty, and it's like we don't have time to approach this decision in the way I normally would? Or
yeah, totally. At that point, there had been no thought or conversation about any government assistance or any understanding of what was going to happen. So it was really like, you saw it open, you could go do something. It was like, we need to be the best at this and the first at this, And I will say, I'll give 100% credit to all our customers. They've been fantastic through the whole thing. They really showed up at the beginning and throughout the whole thing, right? But they were really supportive at the beginning. We were there was a big push at the beginning to, go support your local restaurants, get takeout. And we were actually really busy the first, the first 3 months when people thought this thing was only going to last for 3 months, right? And then, there's pivots and it's lasted so long. And it feels like it's a little bit more of normal way of life a little bit now. But, I think ultimately I'm super proud of the team, and I think we've handled it about as well as you can. And we'll be there at the end, whenever that is, I guess.
Right. And these sort of new things that you and others in the industry had to do, leaning into outdoor dining, the virtual cooking classes, some of those things. How much of that do you think continues on the other side of this, whenever that is? Or does the industry and the experience of running and being in a restaurant generally go back to how it was, you think?
Well, I think it's going to change forever, right? I mean, no doubt about it. I think there's a huge desire for outdoor dining, and I hope the city lets us maintain everything. That's going to be huge. I think it's been good for them as well. They get tax revenue off of all that. So I
think that continue. People will desire that even if they're not concerned about.
We still have people asking to sit on patios when it was snowing.
Yeah, I remember the coldest temperature I sat in outside, I think, was 26 degrees.
Pretty chilly.
On the other side of the mountains in December of 2020. But damn it, I wanted to eat out.
Yeah. People like to go out to restaurants. And, so I think that's one thing that's that will stay as long as the city allows it. I think to-go food and beverage, it makes sense. I know there's the talk of people having cocktails to go, and I mean, I don't. If somebody is irresponsible, they're going to be irresponsible no matter what.
They'll figure it out.
The one Negroni I sell them isn't going to change that. So, I mean, I hope all the to-go stuff stays, and all the virtual classes and things like that. It's actually a more pleasant way to do a cooking class virtually than in person. People are in the comfort of their own home. They know the equipment. They know where to get stuff. It's actually a better experience for the students in the class. As far as like the to-go business, I'll go back to that for a second. I mean, it's actually really healthy for the business, for the restaurant industry, right? I mean, you look at the previous ways, the way that restaurants operated was whatever revenue you could generate inside your four walls. Now that's getting expanded, right? The restaurant industry is tough, and that's a whole new revenue stream that doesn't require a seat. Mm-hmm. So if that business continues, which I hope it does stay strong, and we're still seeing it for sure, but it's nice. These outdoor patios, the to-go business, expanding the four walls of the business is great. It makes a healthier business. It makes it better for the employees. There's more revenue coming in the door, to support higher wages, better benefits. There's all kinds of improvements that are happening to the business right now just by expanding the four walls. So hopefully everything stays.
Yeah. And you help offset those real estate costs.
Yeah. It's, the rents in Seattle, people talk about the cost of rent. The rent isn't as bad as the property taxes.
Yeah.
Property taxes are out of your control. So they can be expensive. So how it works is you have your base rent, and then you have what's called your triple nets. And in that is, maintenance for the building, the property taxes on your square footage of the building. And you combine both those numbers, and that's what you pay your landlord every month. So when I first started in the restaurant industry, you'd pay rent, which hasn't significantly gone up very much. But you have rent, and then you had about $3 a foot in triple net costs. Mm-hmm. We're seeing those triple net costs be $14, $15 now. And it's getting to the point where it's actually like hard on the business. Paying an extra, $1,000 a month in triple net costs before, and now it's $5,000 a month. That's big. It's getting big. So that's the part I think when you start talking about real estate stuff and the costs of rents. It's those triple net costs that are actually the ones that are actually hard on the businesses. And obviously I don't want to say that rents haven't gone up in the last 15 years, but no, they have for sure. But it's really the triple net cost, the additional rent, that's really kind of the pain point these days.
You mentioned customers earlier and noted kind of just how great years have been throughout all of this. Are you seeing maybe more just broadly in the industry, are customers in Seattle kind of giving more grace to restaurants right now, given the times we're in and the staffing challenges? It seems like, Seattleites are very cordial and polite people until it comes to their opinion on their experience in a restaurant, and then they just sort of let you all have it. But do you feel like the customer is kind of got some patience and grace now?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's really the individuals. I've seen both. I've seen people that are super patient, and I've seen people that aren't. Right? I mean, I'll admit you have a lot going to the customer right now. Oftentimes, the restaurants are a little understaffed because somebody's out, or somebody calls in sick, and actually staffing right now is really challenging. You have also the cost of business right now. Everybody talks about, but not really. Nobody really understands what the supply chain, problems are creating. So, I will say we've had to raise prices because of supply chain issues. We have things that have doubled in price for us, and we can't double in price for our customer. So we're sucking up some, but we can't suck it all up, right? Yeah. So we're definitely seeing some complaints about prices. And I'll admit right now, restaurants in Seattle are expensive, and they have been. They're more so now, and I probably don't see it going down much. The fact of the matter is Seattle's a crazy expensive town. It's an expensive town to do business in. It's an expensive town to live in. I hope people understand that people complain about or question the cost of dinner. The majority of that cost is going to the employees. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of staff to run a restaurant. It takes a lot of people, and the cost of living in Seattle is expensive, so we need to pay more for it. Yeah, which is totally fine. It's totally fine. But I think when people are questioning the price of something. They compare it mostly to what they see a piece of salmon they could buy at the store for,
which also isn't cheap here.
It's not inexpensive.
Food is expensive, right?
But they sit there and go, "Well, I can buy that piece of salmon at the store for $10. Why are they charging $36?"
Because it tastes a lot better. I cannot make salmon worth a damn at home.
I could teach you.
Yeah,
it's pretty
maybe
easy.
After this.
But
that is one thing I just don't even try. It's like if you're gonna have salmon, go out to eat. Have salmon.
I can teach you. I promise.
Okay.
It's about the equipment and consistency of the butchered cut and handling it properly.
All right.
Promise I can teach you.
Do you think the model of how you run a restaurant's going to fundamentally change or needs to change on the other side of this, so to speak?
With the outdoor seating, it's a lot more sustainable. And the more people order to go, it's a lot more sustainable of a business. If those things go away, the restaurant industry is probably going to be in a tough spot. I would say, yes, you would have to change. You have three factors, right? You have to bring in more revenue than you did before because it's not as simple as raising prices. You need to sell more. So
do you think that message is getting through into, the Liquor Control Board and the city and other regulators about, outdoor dining, to go, all of that is, do you think they're hearing how important that is to, the survival of our food scene?
Probably not enough.
Yeah.
I've definitely talked to, to Mayor Harrell about it. And I have high hopes there, but, and definitely, Sarah Nelson on the city council knows it because she's in the business.
Yeah.
So there's people that know it. The question is, is there getting to be enough information there? People really understanding that a business model has to function, you know? And I know in the past, the city has always said, well, just raise it a few bucks. And you're like, that's not that simple of an answer. It's a tough answer because we feel constant pressure from our customers about keeping prices down.
Yep.
And so we've tried throughout all the years just to operate a little bit better, a little more efficiently, have less waste, all the stuff you're supposed to do. But there's not a lot more you can do right now.
There's a ceiling to that, right?
Yeah, there's a ceiling to, to efficiency. And we're pretty good at it. And I don't think it's necessarily fair for a new business owner, a new restaurant owner to have to open and operate like a seasoned veteran. I think it's getting harder to get into business, and I think it's harder for new people to come in and be successful. Because, when I started, there was a lot of room for error back then. We made a lot of mistakes that were super valuable for us to learn. But it's tough if you learn those mistakes now. It's really hard.
And speaking of where you started downtown with Union, of course, in 2003.
Yep.
And then where we are today, Tavolata, 7, right? Your second one.
Yep.
And I think when you closed Union, you said, I'm done downtown as far as opening new restaurants. And of course you were wrong. You came back. So why'd you came back with Cortina and you've got other plans, I think, for opening some doors. Why'd you say at the time you were done, and why'd you come back, and what will we see maybe in the year ahead?
Yeah, for sure. First off, I'll say is that the main reason we went neighborhoods, when we first started and formed Ethan Stowell Restaurants in 2007, we did 2 restaurants that year. This one we're in Tavalada and How to Cook a Wolf on Queen Anne. We did both those in the same year. And people thought we were crazy for you're doing 2 restaurants in 1 year. That's crazy. So we basically said Belltown feels a little bit like a neighborhood, and Queen Anne was a big success. Both of them were big successes, was hugely helpful, right? And Queen Anne was a big success, and we said, this feels good. Neighborhoods feel good. And, the only other restaurant group in town at the time was Tom's, who I have massive amounts of respect for. But he was downtown, and Tom owned downtown. Mm-hmm. And so we said, okay, well, Tom's downtown. We're the other restaurant group in town. So I guess we got to go to the neighborhoods. And then we just started focusing on neighborhoods, right? And then, as your business matures, you get a little more infrastructure. We decided to come back downtown. For a couple reasons, we left and we're hesitant about coming back. Downtown's harder to operate in. It's a lot harder to operate downtown. There's different customer patterns. There's different customer focus. Mm-hmm. Lunch is a really hard business, and I'll be honest about it. Lunch doesn't make any money because there's a ceiling on how much you can charge, and not a lot of people have any beverages at lunch.
Right.
When you're talking about cocktails at happy hour and during dinner service, that creates a lot of ease on the business.
The lunch cocktail in Seattle has not been a part of our culture. You get funny looks if you order the lunch cocktail, I think, right?
Yes, you do. And what we, when you're talking about, beverage at lunch, like we're like, oh, we're gonna try to kill it on iced tea. It's not a very sexy
fancy
business.
Mocktail for $8.
Yeah. But we got them. We were a more mature company, and we just grew up. We decided we want to go back down because we had more infrastructure. Because, like I said, downtown's harder to operate in. I mean, I don't want to throw downtown under the bus at all, but safety is an issue. Homeless people are an issue. Social services are a lot concentrated downtown, which creates issues for businesses. I'm 100% supportive of all social services, and I don't want to see anybody sleeping outside.
And you've put a lot of your time and effort and treasure and talent into that through United Way. We should mention.
Yeah. We like to be involved, but being sympathetic, which we totally are, and supportive of solving problems, which we totally are, that's completely separate of whether it makes your business harder to run.
Yeah.
And it does. So, but we like going downtown to Cortina was a big one. We thought that was a really cool project. Our landlords there, Washington Holdings, they're our favorite landlords. They've been the best to us, even before the pandemic. But since the pandemic, they were kind of
good people.
They're great people. The role model, right? And then we obviously did Victor. We're doing another restaurant at the 2+U building, 2+U building down on 2nd and University. That'll be opening, I don't know, sometime spring, summer. Cortina's not open yet, so downtown is where we haven't opened stuff back up yet.
And office workers are a big part of that. Need them back on the street, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Happy hours and lunches and
lunches, dinners. You need all that
company
stuff
events.
To function. Yeah.
And what was your? So I think many folks know you're self-trained, taught chef. But going back a little further, what was your relationship with food growing up?
The reason I got involved in food, I've always enjoyed food, and I always had as a kid. Every kid has a dream of like owning a restaurant one day. They think it's the coolest thing. Parents take them out. They think it's the coolest thing. Mine didn't necessarily start. I always say I had the kid dream of having a restaurant one day because I thought it'd be cool to host people. But
most kids want to be like football players and. I don't know. I don't know a lot of kids that wanted to own a restaurant. But I like.
My mom pulled out a paper of a story I wrote when I was like 10, 8, something. I don't remember how old, but it was a story. It was a paper I wrote about how I wanted to grow up and own a restaurant and a casino.
Yeah, I don't think most kids are writing that paper.
Yeah, I was. I think I was pretty stuck on James Bond movies at the time. So he was always drinking martinis at a casino. So I thought it was the coolest thing.
I want to own an inn, but I didn't have that idea as a kid. That's what I want to grow up to be as an adult. But anyway,
inns are tough, but it'd be fun.
Yeah.
It's all fun and games until
with a restaurant and a bar, maybe not a casino. But
it's all fun and games until the room service person calls out sick and you're making beds,
doing sheets.
My relationship with food was my dad's hobby was cooking. My dad loved food. He loved the process of cooking. That was his unwind for the day, every day. So gather around a table for our family was really important. My parents are both artists, and that craft of cooking was every day how my dad kind of unwound. So it was just, gathering around the table was a really important thing for our family. We had, we would go to the farmers markets before there were farmers markets. We'd go out to Yakima and get our peaches and apples or pears and apples. We'd go to the docks and get salmon. It's just what we did. It was the family hobby. So that just kind of just stuck with me. The enjoyment around the table. Granted, when you're in high school and your parents cook chicken 3 days a week, you're like, oh, I'm so over chicken. But now, like, one of my favorite things to make is a roast chicken. So it's just part of our family culture. Still is. Both my brothers, love food and love cooking. My dad still cooks. My mom still does the dishes for him because he makes a massive amount of dirty dishes.
Yeah.
And we still get together all the time.
Are you a clean cook? Are you someone who's like, keep it clean while I'm cooking?
100%.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
100%. My dad will make, he'll make a piece of salmon with some let's say broccoli, and somehow he'll use like 11 pans. But no, if I'm not cleaning along the way, it's a problem.
And you're a parent. A lot of us parents, cooking during the week is just like a grind. And I'd go out every night if I could, if I was permitted. Does it feel that way for you, or do you like cooking during the week? And what are you cooking?
In the restaurant business, sometimes I'm not home at dinner time. So they often will get something I wouldn't necessarily feed them. But if I'm home for dinner time, which is most of the time, I'd say 60% of the time I cook dinner, and 40% of the time, we go out or something. Because my kids both, they both like food. One of them's a very adventuresome eater. His favorite restaurant is Victor Tavern because he likes the beef tartare with pumpernickel, the beef tartare with the bagel crisps. And he's 9, and he loves oysters, loves going out for sushi. He loves beef tartare.
I thought my kids were adventurous eaters, but that tops them. I think.
Yeah, he loves Dad and loves what Dad likes. He's like, I'm like, what's your favorite steak? He's like, my favorite steak is a New York steak because it has a little more chew than a tenderloin. Because that's what I've said, right? But no, I cook most of the time at home, and every day we have breakfast around the table together, and I make breakfast every single day, and it's, I've got one adventuresome eater and one not so. So one will have a fruit yogurt granola parfait. Or poached eggs or eggs over easy.
Side of baby carrots and pickles.
Not for breakfast. Well, the non-adventuresome one, the weird thing is he likes pancakes every day for breakfast. And one of his favorite snacks in the afternoon is pickles. But, he doesn't say pancakes. He says, Frank, what do you want for breakfast? I want the cake of the pan. And that's how he has for breakfast every day. And he eats, most days in the morning, he has water, cake of the pans.
Yeah.
And then a side of bacon.
But he's thriving.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Ragu. Can we talk about ragu?
Ragu.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Great ragu at Tabalata. I love it.
Very good.
It's something I cook a lot at home.
Very good.
Mine doesn't taste anything close to yours, no surprise. Is there a technique I'm missing? Is there like a must-have ingredient? Is there an approach you must take for the perfect ragu?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, right? Depending on what you're doing, the majority of stuff we like to do is, like a beef short rib, or a, pork shoulder, something that's got some decent marbling and some fat in it. I would say the most times I've seen people make ragu that doesn't actually turn out great is they brown it too much. They try to get it really crispy. They pour off all the fat. Right, and then I find that they add too much stuff in it. So let's say I'm making a short rib.
Some of this is sounding familiar. It's hitting close to home.
A lot of people
not the pouring off the fat part. Hell no, that all stays in there. But the over browning.
Yeah, over browning thing. It makes it tough. It makes it too lean. Got to keep some of the fat in there. You gotta let it break down. So say I'm making a beef short rib ragu. I'll get ground beef short rib. I will brown it off in some olive oil. I will soft brown it. I won't try to get it all crispy. I don't want it actually crispy. I want it cooked, but not browned. And then things you put in a ragu, traditionally it's, garlic, celery, carrot, onion, right? So if I ground the meat myself, I'll just grind all that stuff through the grinder as well. Or do a quick...
Before you saute?
Yeah, before I saute it.
Ah.
So put in a raw carrot, grind it up. Put in a quarter of an onion, grind it up. Put in 5-6 cloves of garlic, grind it up. Put in a couple stalks of celery, grind it up. But if you want to get fancy, you can brunoise everything. I also
Wait, what was the word you just used?
Brunoise. It's like a fine dice.
Okay.
And I also don't ever chop garlic. I only slice garlic, and I'd never brown garlic. So if I was doing it at home, this is what I'd do. I would brunoise a carrot, brunoise a couple stalks of celery. I would mince a half of a red onion. I would slice about 5 or 6 garlic cloves, paper thin. And then I would add all that stuff to my softly browned beef short rib, right? Stir that around, make sure that doesn't brown, make sure it gets soft. And then I would add some white wine, not red wine. A lot of people think ragu has to have red wine.
Right.
So white wine is what my preference. And then I would let that reduce quite a bit. And then I would take a high quality can of tomato, puree it with a stick blender till it's totally smooth. Pour that in, reduce it down a little bit, and then I would do all that the day before, right? And then after it's reduced down to where I like it, which is not crazy thick. I mean, the whole idea of like, the 12-hour, 24-hour cooked grandma's tomato sauce, I actually don't think I personally don't love it, right? I like lighter food. I don't need it concentrated.
Floppy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it was an older school way of doing Italian food, was cooking things down forever.
Yeah.
And I think people are going in for lighter stuff. I think, that's one thing we do here. Like we make at Tavolata, we make, what we call fresh sauce, right? So we take high quality canned tomatoes, whole peeled, put them in a we use a bucket, and then put some whole celery stalks in there, some whole onions in there, some whole cloves of garlic, some carrots in there, and then take what's called a burr mixer. It's basically one of those stick blenders, but much bigger, and then puree that, and then strain that through a strainer to get any bits out, and then we will use that sauce.
That's your base.
As our base, uncooked, and cook everything down and reduce it down to order. We use it like a chicken stock. You're sauteing something in, so you add it, you reduce it down quickly, because it creates a much lighter flavor, much fresher tasting. We've gotten much better response from it. And the reason I think it is I think people just are eating lighter. They want lighter flavors these days. They don't want to leave dinner feeling stuffed. Or feeling like it was intense, right? So we try to make things as light as possible. With pasta,
I leave the table and tell my kids I got to go lay down because I do gravitate toward those heavier things.
Well, that's what everybody's.
I've never thought of your sauce as super light. I think it's great. Yeah, but it's not too heavy either.
It's not that grandma's gravy that's super dark red. And some purist Italians don't agree with it, but it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know what my grandma would think, but I think she'd think it tastes good. But
yeah, I mean, it's all about everything I've been cooking. All of it is simply about just buying good ingredients.
Yeah,
you do that, everything's gonna turn out all right.
Well, I've got some new plans for Saturday. Then I'm going to try some of this. These are techniques I was not deploying.
Okay, go for it.
I feel like we'd be doing Seattle a disservice if we didn't circle back to the salmon. Maybe just a quick okay, if you're cooking salmon at home, do's and don'ts.
Well, do's and don'ts. Don't overcook it, which I think people are so afraid that they're going to undercook something that a lot of people have a tendency to overcook it. Also, I would also say there's a couple of techniques when I cook fish at home, right? So one of them is a pan. I use this thing called it's a Dutch pan called a scan pan, SCANPAN. Buy them on Amazon. They're super good nonstick pans. They're the best ones I've ever found. So that is a huge piece of it. If you're going to sear a piece of salmon, make sure you, first off, you want to buy a squared off center cut piece of salmon so it doesn't have different thicknesses throughout it, because different thicknesses cook different temperatures, right, and different times. So make sure you buy a nice center cut piece of salmon, pat it dry, make sure your pan's nice and hot, season it with salt and pepper just before you put it in the pan. And I'll tell you, I think one of the things about restaurant food is why does restaurant food taste better? Is what a lot of people say. And then everybody's first default is, it's all the butter and cream they use, right? I don't think it is. I think it's we add more salt.
See, I would always use that as a justification to use more butter and cream at home. It's like, this is how it tastes good.
Yeah, we don't actually use that much. We hardly use any cream in any of our places, except some desserts, obviously, right? But we don't use that much cream at all. We definitely use butter. And almost every pasta dish we have, we throw a little pat of butter in there at the end just to give it a little creaminess. But I think the main difference is we add more salt than home cooks do.
Yeah.
Right. So cooking the things and salmon.
I've always used that excuse too. That's how they do it. Just more salt.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And also the type of salt. I use Diamond Crystal kosher salt for 99%. And now Diamond Crystal is the brand and it's kosher salt. So do not mistake it for Morton's kosher salt, which you can find anywhere. Right. Very different. So Diamond Crystal kosher salt is the one I use. But as going back to the salmon, so I've got a technique that I've taught in classes quite a bit, is you want to pat your salmon dry. Because if you don't pat it dry, when it hits the pan, it has moisture in there. It creates steam. Doesn't get that crispy brown color on the skin that you want. So I use a medium-high heat. Let the pan get up to medium-high temperature. Pat my salmon dry. Season with salt and pepper just last second. Put it in the pan and do 2 minutes per side. Right? Sear it 2 minutes per side. And I'm sorry, your stove's going to get splattered and greasy. 2 minutes per side.
Clean as you go, though. Clean as you go.
Clean as you go. 2 minutes per side, and then 4 minutes in the oven. So I have a total cooking time of 8 minutes. 2 minutes, make sure you have a good hard sear in it. Gets nice and golden brown. 2 minutes, 4 minutes in the oven, take it out. There's that way. Or I put the salmon in a cold pan, brush olive oil underneath, brush olive oil on top, put a couple tablespoons of white wine on there, some lemon slices, some dill or rosemary or whatever you want to put on there, and then just bake in the oven for 12 minutes. In a lower oven, like 325 oven. Just bake it for 12 minutes. You know what happens? On the seared one, you get the nice crispy outside, which is great. And then if you bake it, it's still the same thing. Make sure you have a nice center cut piece at the beginning. Pat it dry, season it with salt and pepper last second. And if you bake it, then it has a little bit more of a melting effect. All the proteins slowly kind of break down, and you have a nice, like super soft piece of salmon. But, either way is great. If you're doing the bake thing, you add a couple tablespoons of white wine because you want to create a little bit of moisture in there so it has a little bit of steam to it. So it cooks nice and gently. But, I can still go back to the same thing. Buy good ingredients, work out, right? But the one thing I think, recommending people is add a little more salt and don't overcook it.
I feel like you've just delivered Seattle a public service announcement here.
I don't know about that. You want to know a funny thing? I'm allergic to salmon.
You still try to eat it?
No.
Yeah, you avoid it.
No, I'm actually technically allergic to Copper River sockeye.
Uh-huh.
It's put me in the hospital a few times.
Oh, boy.
So, and the best part was I found out that I was allergic to it the day after I won the Copper River salmon competition. And I didn't get it from that salmon. I got it from the stuff I had the next day.
Maybe you already answered this, but if you weren't doing this gig of running a restaurant enterprise empire here in Seattle and now on the east side of the state and now on the east side of the country, we didn't talk about your...
we got Wolf in New York.
Yeah, in New York City with Nordstrom there. But what would you be doing? Running the casino or something else?
No, I'm not much of a gambler. I got to tell you, I've answered this question 1,000 times, and I would only want to do this if I was good at it. I either want to be good at it or terrible at it, but good enough to be in the practice squad and travel with the team. I would love to be a baseball player. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of staying busy. I love the idea of, just being at the ballpark. That'd be a dream. But like I said, I'd either have to be good at it, so I played, or not good at it. I didn't play at all. And I just traveled with the team and was like a rah-rah guy.
Yeah, no in between.
No in between. Like,
and then lastly, what gives you optimism for the year ahead in Seattle? What gives you concern? Kind of what's your outlook for the city as you look forward?
Well, I'll speak to the concern part first. Right? I mean, I think the restaurant industry, arts, music, fitness, gyms, those things. Those businesses have all been, hotels, airlines. They've all been banged up massively in this pandemic, right? So, there's a few things that would love to see. Obviously, there's a thing called the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the RRF. Reach out to your senators, tell them you want them to fund that. It was a program they put in place last year, and only about 30% of the restaurants that put in a request got funded. So it was handled pretty poorly. They didn't get. They either funded them fully, and once they ran out of money, they just stopped. So a bunch of restaurants got nothing, and a bunch of restaurants got millions of dollars. So the RRF's a big one we'd like to see happen. That would give the whole industry, and particularly small businesses, a good shot in the arm to know they're going to get through this. And I think it's important. People need to see some hope, particularly right now. So, I mean, that's the one thing I want to say that gives me concern. If that doesn't happen, I think we have a major problem in the industry. As far as the bright outlook, I'm still feel very positive about Seattle. I think the elections actually gave me some encouragement this year for mayor and city council stuff. That helped me out, feeling positive. And as far as the city, I love Seattle. I think we're going to continue heading in the correct direction. As far as my industry, I still love restaurants. I've been doing it for a long, long time, and I still love it. And I still love the process of cooking food, serving people, making people happy, and all this stuff, right? So I'm generally a pretty positive person, and my outlook's genuinely pretty bright. So I'm looking forward to us continuing to grow. We're going to grow outside of Seattle, become more of a regional company, and we're excited about that. I'm super lucky. I have a ton of great people I work with. That makes going to work a lot easier. So in general, I'm pretty positive. And I think the Mariners will start playing some good ball. So that helps out a ton.
Yeah. Well, I share your optimism about the year ahead for our city after the bumpy, rocky road that we've been on. And thanks for the part you're playing, not just in your business and all that you're creating for all of us to experience and enjoy, but your civic leadership too, which we didn't spend a lot of time on, but you've been active on a number of fronts on homelessness, certainly through United Way and other venues, and it's been a big part of, I know, your leadership and your company's commitment to the city. So,
yeah, I think if you're in a position to help out, you should.
Yeah,
and it feels it's we do it because we like it, but we also do it because we feel a responsibility because the city's been good to us, and so we have a responsibility to take care of the city and help people out.
So it's ragu on Saturday for me and salmon on Sunday.
Perfect.
Thank you, Ethan, for spending some time on Seattle City Makers with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ethan Stowell. I could have spent another couple hours over there at Tavalata in Belltown chatting away with Ethan. Such a great guy, and has had such a huge impact on how we experience food in Seattle, and is now spreading his impact on other parts of our state and across the country. And I got a report back on Ethan's recommended ragu techniques. I've tried them since our conversation, and I can tell you they work. There's no surprise there. My ragu, which I thought was pretty good before I sat down with Ethan, has now been taken to the next level. So I highly recommend Ethan's recommendations on how to cook a great ragu. I've not tried the salmon techniques yet. It feels more ragu season than salmon season, but I'm going to get after that as the days get longer and warmer. I want to close out, as I do on this podcast, with the can't miss or must do in downtown Seattle. This is a can't miss event or place or experience you just got to check out and go see. And I'm going to give you two. And the first is, and this is not a paid partnership or anything like that with Ethan, but I do got to highly recommend the Victor Tavern over there at 6th and Lenora. We talked about it a bit, but he's just done a great job with that. A great sports bar, but maybe not in the sense that you think of a sports bar. No sticky tables or sticky floors, as I noted. Just great food, a great atmosphere, and lots of TVs right across from the Amazon spheres. And they're open every day, 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. So real consistent hours, and hats off to them for being able to do that. That's a tough thing to do right now. But a great happy hour and great food. So check out Victor Tavern. And then my second must-do or see or experience in downtown, Belltown Bloom. It's a second annual music festival in Belltown happening May 6th and 7th of this year. A bunch of different acts from around Seattle's backyard, up and coming performers performing in Belltown across a couple of venues. It's all ages, and it's 2 nights, again, May 6th and 7th, and you can get tickets at thecrocodile.com. So thank you for joining us for this edition of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.